Welcome to Takeover, the most underrated sports debate show on YouTube. We are back in the studio, and make sure you like and subscribe for weekly sports content.
As you guys already know, my name is Josh.
My name is Deandra.
It's your boy Cam, and this is Takeover.
Yo, hey champ. Yo, we play it all in night. Yeah, need it all in advance. The opposition know we're ready for it. Like a supper we eating, it won't be the last. Grind out the muscle, pull up. Parker right on the grass. We coming in, take over everything, run it up. Not that holding me back. 3 in the wood.
Takeover. Now, Joe Burrow has taken the Bengals to the Super Bowl. Tom Brady has retired in the headlines. But on Takeover Airways, the Atlanta Hawks are in the headlines because Monday night, before Monday night, they were amidst a 7-game win streak and catching momentum. The Hawks were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, Josh. Are they late blooming contenders again this year?
So I feel like you guys already think that I'm going to come in here and tell you that the Atlanta Hawks are on the warpath to the championship, that there's nothing that's going to stop Trae Young. And in all honesty, I believe that this team will win a championship in time. But this year, it's kind of hard to say that they are truly contenders, because contenders to me is a strong word, especially in the NBA, where you have to have a top 5 player to truly be a contender. So while the Atlanta Hawks have been great, they are still 2 games below 500. I think that they're getting it together. I mean, they've already risen to the 10th seed, and they're only 3.5 games back from being the 7th seed and 5 games from the 6th. So they will definitely be making the playoffs, because you can see this offense has been good all year. The defense over the last 2 weeks is top 10 in the league. Getting DeAndre Hunter back 100% has been fantastic for the squad, and Bogey starting to shoot the ball the way he did last year is going to be even better for the team. I think they're finally starting to find the balance. It's almost like trading the one guy that didn't want to be there was actually good for the team. Bye-bye, Cam Reddish. We don't miss you. But to call them a contender and say that they might make a run at the finals, I don't think they're quite there just yet. I think they still have some things to figure out with this young core. I think John Collins kind of has to figure out where his offensive role is going to be. And I think that having Clint Capella in the middle could potentially hold them back, because he's a good defensive center, but he's a mediocre offensive center. So I think that they'll make the playoffs. I think they'll win a series. I think there's a small chance they go back to the conference finals, but I think that this season is more about them overcoming adversity, and then next year they'll be ready to start their official run as contenders.
I would just like to say that, to me, Atlanta is one of the most confusing teams, really. Trae Young had a quote come out, and he said that regular season basketball was really boring, because once you get to the playoffs, it's not that interesting anymore. But, if regular season basketball was so boring, why would you start the season 14 and 20 something? And if regular season basketball was so boring, how would you go to the 12th seed and just recently claim the 10th seed? If you're a playoff team, I feel like you should be able to beat these good teams. And you talked about the health and safety protocol, but really everybody was hit by that.
I didn't say anything about health and safety.
And what?
I didn't say anything about health and safety. Everybody got hit by health and safety. I've seen Hawks fans use that as an excuse, and I think it's a terrible excuse, because everybody had to sign replacement players.
I wasn't pointing it towards you. I was just saying it in general. But you alluded to Cam Reddish being out of the lineup, and that wasn't helping because he didn't want to be there. But you also had a situation where John Collins said you needed to care more, and he was confused or really not really sure where he stood in the lineup. And you talk about Gallinari says the roles or the hierarchy aren't really as defined. Mm-hmm. And then there are more people in Atlanta saying that everyone can be movable except for Trae Young. And I don't really think those things necessarily help the atmosphere that y'all are trying to build as well. And really, like you said, you guys' offense is really highly rated, but until recently, you guys' defense were really bad. And I still think you guys don't really have a reliable on-ball defender that can really overwhelm opposing guards. I mean, you have DeAndre Hunter, but he seems like he can't stay healthy. He can't stay on the court. And you look at Clint Capella, he can't do every single thing. And last year, like you said, they went on a run and they were able to make it to the playoffs, but this is a different Eastern Conference. Who's to say that the Celtics, the Hornets, or the Raptors don't go on a run like some people may say that Atlanta is going to do? And really, only one game separates the Hawks from the Knicks and the Wizards. And I haven't even begun to talk about the Bucks, the Nets, the 76ers, the Miami Heat, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Bulls. So I believe that maybe you guys will make it to the play-in, but I'm not sure.
Oh, please. Ain't nobody worried about the Celtics.
First thing I'm going to say, let's put some respect on Trae Young's name. What he's done this season has been outstanding, and I think he's one of the top 10 most unguardable players in the league, especially in the point guard position. He can take you off the dribble, he can hit the deep three, and he has flow game. Now, a lot of people talk about Trae Young because he's in a smaller market, but Trae Young can absolutely ball. The Hawks as a team, though, they're more pretenders than contenders to me. Look at what they did last year. They switched it around with defense, but they haven't really been that good defensively. I know of late they've been good, but according to NBA.com, they're in general defense. They're tied with the Lakers in general defense, so they're not really a good defensive team. And you think about where the other teams in the East, I don't know if the Hawks are overall better teams than them. You look at the Cavs with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. You look at the 76ers who played a Memphis team last night without Joel Embiid and won. You look at Kevin Durant. You look at Giannis. You look at the roster between Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. I'm not sure the Hawks have enough firepower to stick with them. I do think the Hawks will make the playoffs this season just because, the play-in almost anybody can get in. I think Trae Young can get a couple wins and definitely push them forward. I don't know about winning a series, especially this season with the way they've played. I don't know if you can really trust the Hawks to win a series. But I think the main problem with the Hawks, and this is the same cycle with all Atlanta teams in my opinion, is when they first come out and everyone's excited about them, they're the hunters. But when the Hawks went to the Eastern Conference Finals and beat everybody and put themselves on the map, they became the hunted. And it's so different because teams are looking at you different now. It's like, oh, we can't just sleep because, there's strip clubs in Atlanta. We're going to be fine, you know what I'm saying? We're not worried about the Hawks. Now you got to worry about Trae Young. And now you got eyes on him. And when the eyes are on him, you know what I'm saying, what are you going to do? And so far, the Hawks have told us that they're going to lose because eyes are on them. So until they get past that gap, I'm not sure we can necessarily trust the Hawks because they are now the hunted.
It's a fair point. I think part of the reason they struggled at the beginning of the year is because they weren't used to getting
They were feeling themselves,
best
yeah.
every season. And there's also an aspect of there was some injuries because Clint Capella didn't come in 100%. DeAndre Hunter wasn't 100%, and then he hurt his wrist again. Cam Reddish didn't want to be there and was just trying to pad his own stats. Bogey was still hurt. So there's an aspect of that. And I think that you're starting to see now, they're kind of starting to figure out, because Trae said the regular season is boring thing at the beginning of the season. And his broader point was sort of like it's hard to get into the everyday grind of it when you're used to when you've gotten to the playoffs and it's like every game is so intense and then you got to play like a mid-December game in Sacramento. But like I said, I think they'll make the playoffs this year. I think they have a chance to win the series depending on how high they get. But I think next year, once they start to figure out everything with John Collins and figure out what his offensive role is, or if they want to consolidate him in a wing and make a superstar trade and maybe move Capella and put Onyeka Okongwu in the starting lineup, I think next year is going to be the big year.
I still think they're missing that sixth man, too. I think if the Hawks have someone
Backup
solidly scoring off the bench, I feel like that will definitely make them a better team.
They need a backup point guard because I love DeLon Wright with all my heart, but he doesn't like to dribble past the three-point line. So, Jose Alvarado, you heard it here first. He should be the guy. Anyway, moving on. Going to the NFL. Brian Flores is suing the league. All 32, well, not all 32 teams. Their names is John Doe teams. But the league itself, the NFL, is being sued by Brian Flores, naming specifically the Giants, the Dolphins, and the Denver Broncos, claiming that racism and racial discrimination factored into their hiring processes and general running of teams over various periods of time. So this brings a broader question. Are black coaches disrespected in the coaching world?
My dad always told me, I think he told me this when I was 10, that being a black man in this world, you can't just be good at something if you want to go for something. You have to be great, and you might have to be even better than great to be what you want. And that seems extremely crazy because some people aren't great and they get the jobs over you. And the same thing that was happening in the 60s with coaches is happening now. This is the same cycle. And when I think about extraordinary black coaches, my head goes to guys like Nolan Richardson and Mike Tomlin. You think about Nolan Richardson, what he did for the Arkansas Razorbacks. That team was dormant. It was nowhere. And he went in, he changed the culture in a racist society, and then he was fired after winning a championship in 1994 and kicked out of the University of Arkansas because he spoke out against racism. And you think about the standard they hold black coaches to compared to everyone else. It's unseemable. You think about Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and he's the only black coach in the NFL right now. To be a black coach in the NFL, you have to maintain a record of 143-92. You can't have a losing playoff. You can't have a losing season because Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. The standards they hold black coaches to are crazy, and then you got guys being hired like Urban Meyer and Joe Judge and Freddie Kitchens. You see these guys get these jobs, and you be like, how are they even qualified to do this? And you look at what Brian Flores did. the Miami Dolphins have been trash since I was born. Miami Dolphins haven't been good since Dan Marino, and he has people talking about the defense. He has people talking about how good they were. And Brian Flores worked his way up. He was a New England Patriots special teams coach at one point. He had to go through the ranks. He actually played football. And you look at the owners offering him $100K to lose. That just speaks to the losing culture of Miami. And he can't even get an interview, and he changed the whole entire franchise. And I feel like the same thing happens to black coaches over and over again. Or either this happens right here, or they do this. I might catch a couple flack from you guys from this statement, but I think sometimes they even let black coaches build the system. They let them mold the system, and they end up firing them like they did Mark Jackson from the Warriors. Mark Jackson built the Warriors. Mark Jackson was with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and told them guys how to play. And what they do, they gave it over to Steve Kerr, and Steve Kerr gets all the glory for that. That's unfair. And I feel like the same thing happens to black coaches over and over again. I feel like they're one of the most disrespected coaches, ever coached the game, to be honest.
I agree with everything that you said. I think there'll be situations where a black coach will possess more playoff experience or even have more qualified resume, but will be overlooked or fired for another coach who has zero experience or close to no resume. I think about Jason Garrett, who was 8-8 and held a job with the Dallas Cowboys for 6.5 years, then got rehired by the Giants. I think about Jim Caldwell, who took the Detroit Lions to the playoffs, had a winning record, only for Matt Patricia to come in and have a job for 3 years, not even sniff a playoffs. And like you brought up the point about Mark Jackson. And Brian Flores is really just bringing to the forefront what everyone is already aware of, that the black coach is very disrespected and undervalued. It wouldn't surprise me if ESPN and all of these platforms just keep talking about it for a couple of weeks and then it just disappears, because that's what happens. It happens across all sports platforms. It's covered for a short amount of time, nothing changes, and then the cycle just repeats. I believe these organizations, not just football or basketball, everybody should actually do something to show that they care about bringing about diversity or being equal, and not just talking about it or to appease the black audience, or putting Black Lives Matter on a court, or just putting end racism on the football fields, or just sticking a sticker on a helmet. Do something that will actually cause change. And also, I would like to say that I don't think black people should rely on that stuff to happen either. I believe that if the people in those positions wanted it to happen, they would have been done it already. I would like to bring up an example of Bill O'Brien, who demoted Romeo Crennel and brought in Vrabel. And then Crennel was only then promoted after Vrabel became the head coach of Tennessee. So with all that being said, I would like to say, as black people, we have to look out. When we talk about unity, we have to look out for us. So when we get in these positions, we have to make sure that we make those changes. And when we get a spot at the table, or when we don't get one, create a spot at the table and then invite others to come sit at the table as well.
I'm going to address the elephant in the room. I am not I'm not African American. I'm not of black skin color, so I don't necessarily this is a little out of my comfort zone, kind of stepping into this area. But I will say, looking at it from out here, right? Looking at specifically the NFL, because I think the NBA is doing a lot better with representation. Yeah. And I think baseball, it's kind of hard because there's just so many people. It doesn't necessarily represent the black community very well, but I think it does represent the Latin American and community very well. So looking at the NFL, Brian Flores gets fired despite taking a team that had no talent and making them go 5-11. And then took the same team and went 11-5 the next year, I believe, or 10-6, and put them in the playoffs. And this year, despite starting off 1-7, motivated them to get to where they were in contention for the playoffs on the very last day. He gets sacked. Not only that, he was offered $100K to lose in that first thing, which, by the way, Hugh Jackson recently came out today and said he was paid $100K to lose games for the Browns. Not to mention the whole thing that Flores talked about with the interview with the Broncos. Marvin Lewis said he had the same thing happen in about 2002 with the Lions. So you look at that. Or then the one that pisses me off the most, David Culley on the Texans with a quarterback who was off the field, no talent whatsoever, nobody. They went 4-11, feasibly played better than anybody thought they could, made Davis Mills look like a serviceable quarterback, and then he got sacked. And then you've got the guys that haven't been hired yet. Eric Bieniemy has been the offensive coordinator for the best offense in the league for 4 years, and he's barely getting looks. Byron Leftwich has been the offensive coordinator for the Bucs for a while, got good seasons out of Jameis Winston, and then built an offense around Tom Brady at 43. He's not getting looks. Todd Bowles had like 2 seasons in Arizona, had very little talent, and then got fired, and then they brought in Cliff Kingsbury. And the same, Raheem Morris has never really gotten a fair shake himself either. He did feasibly the best you could do as the interim coach in Atlanta, and I don't even think he was really given an interview in Atlanta. And then you look at the other side of it. Josh McDaniels, after the disaster that he oversaw in Denver, and not to mention the disaster in Indianapolis when he was hired and then stepped down, he's still getting shots. You know, Adam Gase got another shot after what happened in Miami. Jeff Fisher was constantly employed despite his yearly goal to go 8-8. And then like guys like Ben McAdoo still have jobs. It is incredible that African-American coaches are held to this incredibly high standard. And when they don't meet it, they're then fired, and yet white coaches are continually retread. So I think the NFL really needs to take a look at themselves, like you were talking about. They can't just make the sticker bigger or put more on the field. I think they really, like the Rooney Rule is clearly, it's just a box to be checked right now by owners. I think the owners really have to, we might need to get some new blood in there, which is going to be hard because they're all billionaires. But something really needs to happen here to make sure that they are actually doing their due diligence.
Also, I think Brian Flores now becomes the new Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, yeah, he's never getting a job.
Because I don't think he's ever going to get hired again.
He's never getting a job.
Because what he's done, I mean, football is too powerful for this. As crazy as that
Unless he
sounds.
wins the lawsuit, which, based off what he has shown, I think he might have a feasible argument.
But I'm not counting on it, though. I'm not counting on him to win still. And I just feel like it's going to be real tough for him to get a job. He said he's still interested in coaching, but I think he sacrificed his career with this one. I think it's a great cause that he's sacrificing for, but I don't really see change because even with the Rooney Rule, you're just interviewing you're interviewing black people just to interview.
Yeah.
You don't really have, and at the same time, for black coaches, I wonder, like, why go to a place to be interviewed where you're not wanted? It feels like black coaches aren't wanted in the NFL as well. I feel like that's probably another underlying problem that none of this is going to fix because if they don't like black coaches, then black coaches aren't going to coach.
Well, it's the aspect of might seem like you're not wanted, but like it's still something.
Right. Like
you want to be the head coach. Nobody goes into football to be the quarterback's coach for the rest of their career.
Right.
And no one wants to be a wide receiver coach for 30 years. So there's an aspect of you almost have to put up with the fact that you're kind of the third choice to get to where you eventually want to be. But hey, if Flores wants to coach, the USFL is opening up. The XFL is coming back in 2023. Vince McMahon, I'm sure he'd be happy to do it. He has no history of racism.
That we know of, but we don't know. But at the we don't know. But that's going to wrap up our episode.
We do know, Cam.
Josh, do you have anything to say?
We know about Vince. But
I would be so surprised. I mean, at the same time, like, who knows at this point?
Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, send in your takes. I'm kind of stepping on your moment here. I know you typically say that. But, I almost forgot. The Braves are still defending World Series champions.
Oh, Lord.
That's not going away. I hope you know that.
Until they lose. All right. Until they lose. It's not going away. Okay.
They're not losing.
I have nothing else to say.
Like and subscribe. Takeover out. Thank you.
Hey, champ. Yeah. We play it all in night. Yeah. Need it all in advance. The opposition know we're ready for it. Like a supper we eating. It won't be the last. Grind out the muscle. Pull up. Parker right on the grass. We coming in. Take over everything. Run it up. Not that holding me back. 3 in the wood. Rushing. I don't like Dutch, don't even matter, you know I'm facing. When I roll a paper, I like to go double. Run up a check, flip a W, make it an M. I need